Hello and welcome on the Good, the Bad and the Just Plain Standard podcast.
Hello.
Hi, guys.
So what are we talking about today, guys?
Oh, what are we talking about?
Today we're talking about yesterday.
Yesterday.
Oh, what happened yesterday?
Oh, ha 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 ha.
Yeah,
Like slapping moment there.
How long have you had that written down, Yann?
that we went to see actually yesterday. Well, not when you're listening to this, but anyway, as an unlimited thing at Cineworld.
No, I've got it. Save it. Yesterday came out. So this will come out comes out on Saturday. There we go.
There we go.
Now the joke works.
More yesterday jokes.
So stuff to say about yesterday?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think I was pleasantly surprised with this film. I thought that it wouldn't be as good, but I really enjoyed it.
Why did you think it wouldn't be good?
I guess because I hadn't heard much about it.
Yeah.
And I thought the premise was a bit strange. Like they could have really ruined it because I guess we all know that a world without Beatles the Beatles would be awful. But the way that they show that might have failed, right? Like it was really kind of respectfully done.
I think the problem was beginning. I remember when the trailer came out and I went, okay, they're doing this. Now, I'm coming at this from a playing music perspective. Anybody that's ever played music has always wondered the question of this film, i.e., if I could pass off someone else's, if only I'd written that song, if only I'd done this, yeah, etc., etc. So it's a common conversation between musicians and bands going as like, oh, what song do you wish you'd ever written?
Sure.
So that concept is interesting to me, but I was a bit skeptical. Also, I don't think this was helped by the fact that there have been, since Bohemian Rhapsody, and now we haven't seen it yet, but Rocketman, and Stars Born, really, we're now kind of entering a musical biopic era where we're going to see probably about 3 or 4 more, I would imagine, because Rocketman has done exceptionally well and has had high critical praise. So the fact that this one wasn't a biopic, but around in the same time, I think it got lost in the mix of all these musical films coming out.
Probably, yeah. It seemed quite low production as well. Like it didn't seem like it would be extremely expensive to put on.
Well, you'd think that until you have to take into the accommodation that you have to pay to use the Beatles music.
Well, no, but I'm sure that that's probably where quite a lot of the money went to. And of course they had Wembley Arena and they had loads of different locations. And of course the actors had to be paid.
I believe that the Wembley Stadium feature, which is near the end of the film, is much in the vein of how they used in Fighting With My Family. They used an Ed Sheeran concert to film this bit. Probably.
Oh, yeah.
Most
definitely.
likely.
Yeah, definitely.
To at least get the wide shots, at least.
Yeah.
Probably.
But I mean, with like the conversations and the way that it was shot, it seemed kind of like an indie film.
Well, it felt British.
Yeah, it felt British.
And I think that's down to the writing, because this is written by Richard Curtis, who, for most people, will know him from Mr. Bean, or if you're a movie lover, you'll know him from Love Actually and Four Weddings and a Funerals. Those are the Bridget Jones as well. These are the big hitters in film. But television, he's a very down-to-earth British sort of movie maker and writer. Like British comedy, as defined after Monty Python, is almost defined by Richard Curtis writing.
I know him because he's Emma Freud's partner.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, she has a producer credit in this. I was like, oh, that's interesting. She's a broadcaster and there's like, what? Nah, yeah, digging. It made sense. When I went to see the talk, Bryan Cranston talk after his network thing 2 years ago, Emma Freud was the host of the panel thing, of the talk. Well, I'm kind of glad I stopped watching trailers, because if I did, well, I don't know what the content was, but I guess it explains pretty much what the concept is. I probably would not have had a go to go watch this film, because essentially I've seen the same concept multiple times before. There was a film, I don't remember the name, like in the 70s. It was a French guy who Mozart came back from the grave and offered him some unreleased compositions that he would pass as his own. But it was fine. Mozart was fine with that. And more recently, 2006, and after I saw one yesterday, I went to type Jean-Philippe and yesterday 2019, and plenty of French commentators are talking about yesterday as a loose remake of that Jean-Philippe.
Right, okay.
So essentially, I talked about this guy a few times already, Johnny Hallyday. Mm-hmm. His original name was Jean-Philippe Smet, and essentially he was extremely popular. He was the father of rock and roll in France for 40 years, and is not known anywhere else, which is quite fascinating. And like the Scottish comedian, you have Connolly,
Billy Connolly.
Billy Connolly, yeah, is that type of legend, kind of iconic. And,
right. Okay.
Global.
Yeah, there was a national funeral when he died and all that kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay.
And that film, so 2006, was about a standard guy who bumped into something. He had, it was not a cycling accident, but anyway, and he awakened in a world where Johnny Hallyday never existed. Okay. Well, never made it. So the guy existed, but he had a motorbike accident on his way to one of the concerts, which would have made him famous.
Right.
So that never happened. And that guy managed to, because he remembered all the lyrics, and his goal, it's not exactly like what we have with yesterday, but his goal was to bring Johnny back into the hearts of everyone.
Okay.
Which is, well, kind of a bit what we have instead, that the guy himself didn't sing. He didn't sing himself. He brought the actual guy. But it's extremely similar. So I wasn't impressed by the originality of the concept. However, I like the treatment quite a lot. And it has Lily James, so obviously I'm entranced every time she appears.
Yeah, this is the first time I've watched the film and noted to myself, like, whoever did the costume for Lily James needs a medal, because it was like, it worked really well. Like, it fitted. It looked like something she would wear.
Yeah, it was nice. Also,
this is a film I won't probably watch it a second time, because it has some, so that's personal stuff, heartbreaking moments that involve friend zoning. Kudos to them. It was done so well that actually was heartbroken pretty much watching this.
Yeah.
I don't think I can watch that again.
So there's two functionalities in this film. There's the music aspect, which I'll delve into a lot, because I have a lot to say about this film. And there's also the reimagining of a rom-com, because it is funny, but it's not overtly funny. Like, it's not set up for laughs. The fun usually comes out of the situations, which is it Bridget Jones-esque in that sense in his writing? Because it doesn't set out to tell jokes, but funny things can happen.
Yeah, but I think in Bridget Jones, it's a bit more in your face, like the way that it's acted and the way that it's shown. It's a bit more like, this is funny, like it's over the top funny, right?
Yeah.
In this one, as we were talking about before, it has that British feel of being understated comedy, where you laugh, but you're not like made to laugh. It's like you're kind of laughing with your mates type feeling.
Yeah, you're laughing because you know these situations happen, and when they happen, they are funny, and they're also funny to retell to people. There's a very British thing of retelling events that have happened and going, remember when that happened? Remember how stupid or how that night went, etc. And that's kind of a British humour thing, which relatable goes through this. But Yann's point about the friend zoning fact really played well, I thought, especially in the film for who Jack is, Jack Malek's character. I think that worked really well. There was never this whole heartthrob moment. He becomes this idol in that sense, which they could have done, because everybody had their favourite Beatle. You know, girls in the Ron Howard documentary 8 Days a Week, Sigourney Weaver talks about how she would do her hair up and get her makeup done because obviously Paul was going to see her, sort of thing. So I'm glad they didn't use that factor of doing the Beatles and turn it into like he has all these women and stuff, and then realizes like, oh, I was meant to be with a friend. Like, it really does focus on he doesn't really have any other romantic interests except her, and then he realizes like, oh shit, I've messed this up entirely.
It's this interesting concept as well of like, if your whole life is about your career, you kind of leave people behind. And of course you can like he was not, like Jack Malek was not able to compartmentalize, right? It was like, this is what I'm doing now. I've just found this incredible gift and nothing else matters. And in a way, he treats people around him like shit, really. Like the whole, when he's showing his parents Let It Be and they keep interrupting him because, of course, this song is not Let It Be that like we know. It's just a song that their son has written, unsuccessful son. And he stops and screams at them and says like, this is like Da Vinci, creating his art right in front of you. And of course we know that because we know the Beatles are as iconic as anything. But of course, if you have that outside of the situation, it's like, wow, I can't believe you've just said that. Like he kind of loses it a bit, right? And especially when he starts screaming at his manager and Ed Sheeran and all that when they're crowd, like, stop crowding me. I can't be creative if you're crowding me. And it's like, he's immediately become this arsehole.
I don't think he gets there. I think he has these moments which kind of highlighted to me as like, I'm glad they didn't go the diva route of like how everyone portrays the whole John meeting Yoko, and like changing the dynamic of the band. That whole like genius moment, which is portrayed, the best portrayal I've seen that is probably in the Simpsons episode where they become the barbershop group, which the Beatles parody for the B Sharps in The Simpsons, that whole bit. So I'm glad they didn't go down that route, but they used moments of that to highlight. It's like, oh yeah, this happens sometimes to people when they get these moments. Because it is the point of like, it's not just the fact that the Beatles are gone. It's like, I never thought for a moment he was like, I'm going to become famous using the Beatles. There was always this thing of like, nobody's heard this. How have nobody heard this? Like sharing the songs again. And I think that plays throughout the story subtly, and then coming to fruition at the end where he releases all the songs because they should be released.
He was never a diva. It was just that he thought himself a fraud because he didn't actually write these songs.
Yes.
So of course, and I thought this was brilliantly shown when he goes up on the roof and he sings Help. And it's almost like he's actually screaming help. Like, get me out of this situation, please, because I'm not happy.
And plays perfectly well because that's what Help was written about as well.
Oh yeah, of course.
So it's double works because it's using what the actual song Help was written for. And it plays to the same moments of like the press conferences.
Right.
I did think this press conference scene just annihilated Bohemian Rhapsody's one, which was good. A lot of this film kicked the shit out of Bohemian Rhapsody for me, I'll be honest.
It seemed more real. Like you could see this.
It didn't feel like an ego trip.
No, yeah. Exactly.
It wasn't stroking the Beatles' ego going like, remember the Beatles. It was like, it was the music. It was never about the person. It was the music. And it wasn't, to an extent, it wasn't really about the band either. It was just really about the songs, which is impressive because we talked about all the way back in episode 1 about how Baby Driver works because of its songs as well and its choice. And here it's an even bigger risk because you don't get the music, you don't have the film at all.
Yeah, of course. Oh, they definitely needed the rights from Sony
and the
Apple.
The business side comes from Sony because Michael Jackson sold back the Beatles back catalogue because he ran out of money. And then you have to have the Apple's right, not the company Apple, the music.
Apple Corp, not Apple Inc.
Yes.
Yeah.
Have the aesthetic rights, as Danny Boyle said, to the songs and not misusing them for the wrong reasons, etc. On the Graham Norton, he did say that this is the second most expensive thing he has ever bought for a film, the use of the Apple Music. The most being Leonardo DiCaprio's fee, probably for The Beach, because didn't he just come off of Titanic, then do The Beach?
Yeah.
So that would have been a hefty sum plus inflation.
Yeah, sure.
So I dread to think how much that cost. Should have given it to you, McGregor, then.
So they resurrected one of the Beatles for this kind of. Yeah,
they and it's Robert Carlyle. Because I was thinking about it all last night because it's a beautiful scene. Because the whole way through the film you're kind of thinking, when are the Beatles, are Paul and Ringo going to make an appearance being the last two living Beatles? And they flip, or as famously talked about now, subverting expectations because of Game of Thrones. They subvert your expectations and it's John.
Yeah, it is. And I think there were some stuff that were left on the cutting room floor because Paul McCartney is credited in there. Yeah, I don't remember if it's as himself or as a little tiny role, but
No, I think I saw this too. I think it's because of the legs in the James Corden-esque shoot, but because they're titled as they do appear in the film.
Ah, they use the actual Paul McCartney's legs?
No, it's not. It's an actor playing. It was Paul McCartney, and it's in an actor's name. Because I looked at IMDb this morning, so maybe that's what it means. Or Jan's right. There is stuff on the floor.
Oh, I don't.
Or he might be in the crowd. He might be.
He might be somewhere, but
yeah.
we don't know. You might be right, Yann. They might be on the floor. But it was nice to see that John scene. Actually,
Yeah.
I thought that was really well done.
I cried. I mean, being a huge Beatles fan, it's like I wasn't. When was John Lennon shot?
70s.
Really?
Was it 70s, 80s? I'll look it up.
It couldn't have been that early.
I think it's 79.
Well, I wasn't alive. And so, of course, I can't even talk about how that affected me when I heard the news type thing. You know how they always say, where were you when JFK was shot, John Lennon was shot, 9/11? You know, you all have these moments where people talk about how it affected them. But my sister was a huge Beatles fan, and she got me into it after, because, you know, we're the type of sisters like, oh, you're into it, I'm also cool enough to be into it. And she was always cooler than me in her like music type. She was always into like, you know, 70s, 80s stuff. So I came in quite late, but it really got to me seeing John Lennon, and especially when Jack Malek's like, oh my God, you've made it to 78.
8th of December 1980 is the day that John Lennon was assassinated. So I wasn't far off by 79. And it's quite topical because it was Paul McCartney's birthday this week. Well, last week.
Oh, really?
When this comes out, he is 78. So the 78 line works for when the film comes out.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. So I think it was nice because, of course, John Lennon was shot by a fan. So if he hadn't been famous...
Catcher in the Rye!
Yeah. If he hadn't been famous, then why wouldn't he have lived forever, you know?
Yeah, that's true. That's a
I did
question
also think, sorry, just to carry on from that point, that at that point he's like, is he going to go to the concert and sing Imagine?
Yeah.
I was like, no, that was John Lennon on his own. You'd have to pay separately for that, so you couldn't buy that with the Beatles, so that would be even more money spent.
That was another moment where they subverted my expectation, thank you. Because I thought that he would carry on after he'd seen those two people with the Yellow Submarine saying thank you for bringing the songs back to us. I thought that he was going to carry on and then just ask Al to like marry him or something on the stage. But actually he, in Wembley Arena, said to everyone, hey, this isn't me. I didn't write these. And then actually credited the people that did, who don't exist. Well, who did, but they never made it. So I always wondered why no one would then go looking for Paul McCartney, Ringo Starr, George Harrison.
Well, the film ends at that. Yeah, like to make it something in the film.
Yeah, I was wondering why people they wouldn't talk about how people would then go find these four people.
Well, because I think that this film actually only has a backdrop of music, and as a main story, that's the love story a bit with Ellie and Jack.
Right. So
yeah, the focus of the film isn't about where did the Beatles go. Yeah, you're right. The focus of the film is the relationship between Jack and Ellie, and also his music career over the top of it as well. Yeah,
and I prefer that. I just thought that was something that I immediately clocked onto, and I don't think that's the fault of the film. I just think that annoyed me.
We also don't know if Paul McCartney was born. We know John Lennon is, but we don't necessarily know Paul McCartney or Ringo or George was born. We only know John exists.
No, I know, but if someone brings out these amazing albums and then in Wembley says, oh, by the way, these people wrote it, wouldn't everyone then freak out and go find those people?
I don't know.
I felt like that was kind of immediately forgotten.
Well, I mean, if we look at what was it called? The Finding Rodriguez documentary. If we use that as a real life situation of that, like him being huge in South Africa,
looking for
people looking for Sugar Ray. That's it. Yeah,
searching for Sugar Man. Yeah,
Sugar Man.
Oh yeah, Sugar Ray is the boxer. That does exist. Somebody did try to find him, but it wasn't like a nation. It wouldn't be like an online global search. Like it would be down to a couple of people, because that's how it worked in that documentary, and that's how it was. And
I guess.
And people did find him after that movie, but I don't think people would necessarily. I think some people would, but I don't think everybody in the world would be madly searching for
I guess
the
so.
Beatles.
I guess so. Okay.
Also, there'd be no evidence because the world reset. They never did it, so they wouldn't know themselves that they wrote the songs.
That's why I found it a bit weird that he would name these people that never existed. I don't know why. This made it that for some reason this whole thing just made me like, oh, I don't know about how I feel about this, but I understand completely what you guys are saying.
Actually, it's probably that because the two other guys remember them. So that initial surge was probably something that erased everything from everyone's memory and something of that sort. Because if it was not the only one, there are also two other people that remembered. Mm-hmm. So they actually probably all of them exist somewhere.
Gosh, yeah. I mean, this is a weird tunnel to go down because this actually was never addressed in the film. It just kind of grated on me that it was left there, that these amazing writers and singers were talked about, and then it seemed like everyone sort of forgot. But yeah.
Do you think that all the Oasis, Coke, all this was added to have some other stuff, or it was just for comedic effects?
I think it's both. I think it is both. I mean, it's things that are typical. The Oasis is a joke on the because the Beatles don't exist.
Yeah.
The Coke and the Pepsi thing, it's things that are huge in the world that are gone, which is I think is quite funny. I think it's just it's at both, right? It's feasible that these things would go because it would. I don't think it would make sense if only the Beatles vanished in that thing. That would just be weird. It's like, that's really convenient. But the fact that other things go grounds it a bit more, that it was like a reset button and the Earth just forgot about some stuff and that stuff never existed. Which is like, okay, I believe that. That's more believable to me than just one thing vanishing in a sci-fi sense.
Yeah, yeah. And it did have a great comedic effect, didn't it? Mm. And it's kind of got that dramatic irony feeling of like something that we know, but the world that is presented to us doesn't know. And that's always kind of satisfying. Shakespeare uses it a lot.
Yeah, that's the humor of the film. It's like we're looking at this alternate world going, how could, like, laughing at the fact that the people are oblivious to what's going on and what we know, which is what farce is in a way. Mm-hmm. I think maybe it's not farce. I might be getting that wrong, but
apparently there is an important connection between the Beatles and Coca-Cola. So maybe they helped popularize that thing, and it would not have the impact it has today.
It might be a song lyric somewhere.
No, I think it's something where they maybe performed near a Coke, something.
That was the
perform near a Coke.
Coke sign.
Just like a can.
No, like marketing wise, it was like really good because when it was, I don't know, filmed or something, there was something good for marketing that the Beatles did. I don't know specifically, but I don't know.
That was like the Beatles, Coca-Cola, and the Casbah Coffee Club. So there are a few articles. This is from the Coca-Cola company. So they have a few things, but probably this one was also linked.
I don't think it's everything related to the Beatles vanishes, but I think because I think the thing is as well that anything that grew off of the Beatles vanishes, which is why Oasis vanishes.
Yeah, and maybe without the Beatles, Coke didn't, they had some inspiration and then they didn't make it as big as something. And then cigarettes, I guess, was part of that. Harry Potter is a different one.
I don't think, that's why I'm like, it's not related to the Beatles. It's like, it's other things vanish as well.
That was just funny, especially because he was like, oh no, nothing. No, I don't want to go down this road again.
Yeah, I thought it was going to also impersonate her. But
yeah.
No.
I thought that this was a good example of actors breaking away from soaps. Now, the actor who plays Jack, and I've forgotten his name off the top of my head. Hamish Patel was in EastEnders for years. I never watched EastEnders, so I don't know him in that show, but there'll be a lot of people in Britain that know him as that character. Like, you walk down the street and they don't say, hey, Hamish. They'll say what his character name is in EastEnders. And I thought this was nice because I thought he was really good in this. Like, it was a well-directed performance.
Yeah.
And there's something about Danny Boyle that gets these performances out of anybody. Because, I mean, even Ed Sheeran was pretty decent in this.
Yeah, yeah.
So that just goes to show that when he was in Game of Thrones, he just had no direction.
By the way, did you detect any of Danny Boyle's trademarks in this, Adam? I know you're not a fanboy, but you're an appreciator of his work.
Yeah, there's never a boring shot. In Danny Boyle's films, there's always something interesting going on. The one I noticed a fair amount was you never had a shot that was just like straight the two people in a scene. What I mean is, like, when you see two people deciding something, you'd see like both of them in the shot, like as a wide. There's always something interesting going on. When usually it was like Dutch angles, like extreme Dutch angles, with everything felt off at 45 or at a different angle, which is nice. And they're sort of staples of what Danny Boyle does.
Like in Latitude Festival, when they're walking and there's like the umbrellas on the wires, and it's like at a Dutch angle, and just with the umbrellas and the people walking, and it's just so lopsided, it all looks kind of fantastical.
Yeah,
I haven't seen any of those Dutch angles for a while, so I was a bit surprised with whoa, I wasn't ready there.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. The
very first times, like
when they went to a certain, like,
when they were in Liverpool
locations, they would have it written as a kind of announcement, like on the train you have the lighting, what is it,
the train going past.
No, the text going past.
Oh, do you right? I see what you mean.
So like Lime Station was kind of projected over the whole building, Lime Station, in sort of, you know how when you're on the train and there's that kind of announcement board that has the writing written.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, just like the song name in huge in the tunnel thing.
Yeah, there's stuff like that, and there's also, you know, the montage of the different countries, and then people liking it on the whatever social media platform it was, all that sort of thing.
Yeah,
did feel to me a lot like in T2, where we get to the very end, and or even the scene when they're talking about Georgie Best coming back from from Glasgow.
Yeah,
you know, when it screens the Georgie Best on the side of the car and that sort of stuff. So there's this almost a new wave of what Danny Boyle's doing with now technology and being older in a way, looking back at in nostalgia.
I thought it was very Black Mirror-y, that scene where he was watching all the hearts and stuff.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It reminded me of the one where it's like a talent show. It's like, you know, Britain's Got Talent, and you either you become a singer or you become a porn star. Yeah, it reminded me of that.
Oh, the Black Mirror episode.
Yeah.
First season,
Yeah, I know the one you're on about,
that was the first one I watched. Yeah, it's got that kind of lots of digital stuff going on. It's a really clever way of quickly showing something changing or becoming better or bigger, while also how it's affecting the person that's watching this happen, right? Like you have Hamish Patel in front of this screen and he's watching while it changes. And so it's a really quick, clever way of showing how it affects you as a person. Genius.
The relationship between them and the way they play out was excellent. The whole stuff with whenever she's in the car and wants to basically go further, I thought all of that stuff was just spot on.
Yeah, her character's really nice and sweet as well, right? Like you find her really lovable, and you want them together, but you also want him to just kind of wake up a little bit. You know, there are moments where he doesn't come off as great, which I thought was interesting, because sometimes, you know, with these huge blockbusters, you have everyone so likable and everything's so great. And it was nice because he had moments where you were like, oh, that wasn't good, was it? You're not coming across as perfect. Well, and it was nice.
Like a human being.
Yeah, exactly. He came across as a human being. And also, like, pretty cool, because you'd think that any musician wouldn't like to just take someone else's writing, you know, lyrics, and become super famous and be okay with that. And he wasn't. I think the film isn't about him, I want to be the Beatles. I think that's a really bad way of summing up this film. It's like he tries to pass off as the Beatles. No. I think he just shares these songs. And that's the way I'm looking at it, with the whole, like, showing the world these songs. And it's not, you never get the sense that it's about him, which I really appreciated. There's a shift, because at the start of the film, he's like, he wants to be a musician, but he's also kind of like, it's not like it's do or die. It's not like it's, I don't remember if it was the main theme in That Thing You Do. Yann might remember. It was like they wanted to be this big, massive band. No, the main theme was Guy really wanted to be recognized by his peers more in the jazz scene, and it was he basically created the whole band with the new tempo and everything. Oh, yeah. But, that was not the same kind. So it's like,
I liked that because it wasn't egocentrical. It wasn't I'm going to take the Beatles and be the Beatles. And that's why there never is that upstaging part of like, you're a fraud, which is why I think it works. And I think that it'll be a common misconstrued, people going like, there's never any consequences for him taking the music. I'm like, because he never really takes it for outright for personal gain. It just happens that everybody else doesn't believe that he doesn't write these.
Yeah, that's why the other two go and say thank you. Like, we can't sing, so we can't bring the music back into the world. So it's awesome that you have, rather than them saying, how dare you take the most amazing songs and make them your own. You know, that's never part of their message. I thought it was nice because he becomes a spoiled brat, not because he feels entitled or he's becoming a diva. It's because he can't deal with the fact that he's getting all this recognition and love on something that he hasn't written himself. And so he feels like a fraud and he can't deal with that. That's why he becomes, he has moments of, like freakouts but he also knows that it's important that people know the music of the Beatles.
I think it was a great satire because usually it's the perception of an artist. An artist has to put out a vision, and they talk about image in the film as well, with Kit McKinnon playing the LA business manager, not the music manager, the business manager. Where we always you say an artist to anybody and you have this perception of who they are. But is that really who they are? So the film balances, because we meet him before that happens. So the people that know him, and when he's around them, like his parents and Ellie, we see the guy we like and realistically the real Jack. Mm-hmm. But everybody else puts the image on him. He never outwardly portrays the diva modes, and they always come from him trying to be honest about the music as well.
Yeah, like how they want to change the album cover. I thought that scene was really funny.
Oh, I've got so much to say about that scene.
It was so true. I'm sure that there are board meetings 5 times a day that are exactly like this. Like, we took your idea, and sorry to all Americans, but I'm just going to do the accent. We took your idea and we thought it was really nice, but it's a bit busy, and everyone going, it's a bit busy, yeah. And like clapping after every 5 seconds. It was just so beautifully done.
So about the White Album, you can see how problematic that could be, right?
Yes, exactly.
It's like,
there's a lot of white going on, and, you know, we're not really into that. And he's like, no, but this wasn't about race. You made this about race. This was just as in the color.
it was that scene is just kind of what the crossover point for anybody that's an artist. And there's that there. We could talk about it in this context for music, but I'm sure that if we are lucky in these situations, that moment would happen to us. There is the moment you cross over from when it's about the music, or in our case about the acting, to when it's about the business. And that's unfortunately the crux. And they call it the poison chalice in the film. That whole scene when it's a massive room of people basically creating what the world will see, rather than people having the music and letting it just evolve on its own. It's kind of soul crushing because we know that what the image of the Beatles are, and how really they created their own image, you know, with the suits, the whole idea of them, they look exactly the same, the haircuts, that style. They did that with their manager, because there's a point
that was created for them.
Yeah, it's created for them, but they made that image work for them, right? It wasn't a boardroom of people going, what do we think would be popular?
No.
It's not necessarily always the boardroom. You've got a suggestion from the Ed Sheeran night. No. It's Hey Jude.
Yeah. Everyone's like, no. Oh God.
The other thing I really appreciated, and it's something I feel is loving music all of my life, is the commentary that this film makes about how many writers are on songs. I'm like, that is so true. There doesn't need to be 17 people. The record at the moment, if you look at the Ariana Grande song 7 Rings, not only features the writers of My Favourite Things, which is it's Hammerstein? Those two, plus about 10 other people. I'm like, for God's sake, you're sampling a song already. Do we need another 10 people?
It kind of sounds like Ariana Grande just like walked into the studio and said, oh yeah, that sounds good. Oh, let me just write a little bit. And then that's the song made. Like, it's all about production and marketing and costume and the video, that the music doesn't have to be good. Because actually, if you listen on the radio to Seven Rings, it is the most lazy, and also you've heard it about 20 million times before. Like, this song has been marketed 20 million times. And
since the 60s and Julie Andrews.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And that's been also done before. That's been sampled so many times.
Yeah.
So why did we that, it soars to number one, but it's probably because you've watched the video and you like the aesthetic of what Ariana Grande is, You
like
the long hair, the slicked back,
the Disney princess sort of vibe.
The pink, the fluffy, the whole sex thing going. It's not about the music anymore.
Yeah, they've marketed a young woman in a idea, right?
Yeah.
In that sense, like from Disney princess, Disney girl to female icon, which she does a lot of good things. It's just, we'll get into this when we talk about Aladdin, the new one, because it's going to be the start of a new series as well, because I looked at the Rotten Tomatoes score and it's the start of our new idea that I had. We could definitely start with Aladdin for this one. Why now? And what's the reason for it? Like, kudos for doing one thing and doing it well, i.e. the casting in Aladdin. But why are you really, is that really the reason you're doing it, sort of thing? Like, calling into question, like, what is the real reason for this? When a lot of the time, and it's money, which we'll get into. But we briefly touched on it with Tommy when he was here with Alan for Anne and the Apocalypse, when he was in London, and he talks about how he hated it because it was always chasing to be appearing on credits and all that sort of stuff, and that's just wasn't him, So I really appreciated the film not deeply going into it, but going into that, and also highlighting the fact that the Beatles is 4 people, collaborative. They all wrote songs. And the main two being John and Paul, but they all had to go. And then George Harrison had a very successful solo career later on after the Beatles, so he grew into an excellent singer-songwriter. So they're all talented people. And Ringo always gets overlooked because he played the drums and didn't sing as much. But Thomas the Tank Engine is a banger. But no, it's
and the drumming.
It's just there are so many small moments for a music fan. For example, they buy him to replace the guitar that's broken in the accident. They buy him a Martin and Co. Right? Martin and Co. guitars for acoustic people are the one. They sound so good. And that's an expensive gift they buy him. I think
you could tell by the little looks that Elle and Jack kind of exchanged that this was a huge deal. Even if you weren't into guitars like I am, like, I immediately knew that this was a huge deal. Like, so
the guitar he uses is about $2,000 probably.
Yeah.
I looked at Guitar World today, Guitar, which is a Edinburgh and Glasgow based guitar shop, and it was £2,000. It was down from £2,000 to £1,600. I was like, that's not bad, but that's a lot of money. But they sound so good, and it's because it's the way they're built. But there was so the whole thing that he even made a joke about Wonderwall. He's like, I did a really interesting performance of Wonderwall. I'm like, that's just perfect, because of course you did Wonderwall at some point. It's just, there's so many music loves, the whole Latitude thing. I'm sure Dance on Tables have played Latitude.
Yeah, or I think they will.
Oh, they will. They've done a Scotland equivalent of Latitude. I'm not sure. I'll ask Gregor next time I see him if they've done that.
Wearing their t-shirt,
repping it.
Yeah, looking at the computer, I saw that like 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, I'll send a photo to them going, it's free publicity for you here.
Representing. I think going back to this whole marketing, poison chalice thing, you definitely have this feeling of Deborah wanting Jack to
Deborah was in the Baby Driver, yeah. She's called Ellie.
No, Anouk was talking about
Deborah,
Kate McKinnon.
Oh, sorry. So sorry.
I know what you meant, yeah.
Yeah.
It is weird. I hadn't noticed that until Anouk said Deborah. No. I was like, oh yeah, Deborah is also...
Kate McKinnon's character.
Yeah, the man.
It was almost like sign your name on the dotted line, and literally like either you can do whatever you're doing, or I can bring you money and fame, but you're going to have to sell your soul to the devil, pretty much, because it's not going to be about the music. And I mean, of course, you can be Ed Sheeran, which was interesting that he was in this film because he's kind of known for that, like one man only thing, you know, like one man with his guitar and the loop pedal and all that stuff. Like, of course, he does I think it is called a loop pedal when you when you record it and then you can play it again and then you record something else and you play it over, but you kind of do it yourself on stage.
Yeah.
So that's literally Ed Sheeran on stage on his own.
Well, Ed Sheeran was clever because when he was discovered, he already had the style because he'd been doing it for ages, and that was the sound, right? So they didn't have to rechange him because Jack's out of nowhere. They go, right, we can make this whole image, which they do. You know, they'll package you up and you'll be this new thing, and that's what it is. But if you come in with your own style and your own already identifiable identity, I guess it's easier to try and keep that because they can't really change what's already been pre-established. So,
well, I mean, you'd be surprised at how horrific these people are.
Well, I know, but if we're thinking in the sense of like, if you come, I'm saying like Ed Sheeran, like the one I remember was the one in the "You Need Me but I Don't Need You" was the first one I remember.
Yeah,
and that was his style, and he still is that person, right? So he comes out with that song, and he was busking for years, and it will be the same sort of style, right? Because that's the only way you would consistently be able to write songs is by keeping your own identity.
Yeah, because he's talented in himself, like he can sing and songwrite.
Whereas if we look at, let's take an example of Create the Image, if we look at Star Is Born with the Lady Gaga version, who is unknown, she comes out and becomes this viral hit. They change her image because they can.
Yeah, but Lana Del Rey is one of the most famously did this. She had a few songs and they were total flops, and then they changed her image and she became Lana Del Rey.
Yeah.
They changed her name. No, but she was famous before. So she came in with her look. It didn't work. And then they changed her whole image, changed her name, changed the way that she did everything, and now she's Lana Del Rey. So I know what you're saying, but sometimes if it doesn't work, they will change everything that you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious then, because I talked about that a while ago, about how, so the guy I talked at the start, Jean-Philippe Smet, Johnny Hallyday, essentially struggled all his life because he was just a performer. He didn't own any of his songs, which is the exact opposite of what the U2 is doing. They are owning everything. How is it for Ed Sheeran and the Beatles? Are they?
Oh dear. Yeah, the Beatles didn't own any of their own songs.
Yes, they did.
No, they didn't.
Never?
I think they did. For a long time they did. And then wasn't that one of the reasons why, so you couldn't play the Beatles on iTunes because they wouldn't sign over their contract? But I think they did. Or at least because isn't that why Apple, that's why, because they started with the Apple logo and Apple, the Apple that we know, took it. And that's why for a long time the Beatles music couldn't be played on iTunes or any Apple product.
Well, I mean the fact that the Beatles' own songs were bought off them by Michael Jackson.
That was much.
That's later on, but it's like that just goes to show that you don't own your own songs.
Yeah, but that was much later. I think for a long time they did. That was my point.
All right, okay.
And then when they after they broke up, I think John Lennon had already died, I would say. And Paul McCartney, you know the song, what was it called? Stay na 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 na, so don't play games with my affection.
I don't really know Wings.
No, maybe it's Paul McCartney and Michael Jackson, and that's when Michael Jackson started thinking, "Oh, I could buy the Beatles," and then he did.
So because essentially, you could have performer credit on the album for the songs and writing credit, but it's been produced by a company, so that's that's the entity that owns the songs, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the thing is that the U2, they created their own production company specifically for that from the start.
Right, okay.
I don't know how, Ed Sheeran, for instance, does it, but...
Yeah, I would think so, because he writes it himself,
but
mostly.
You don't own it. That's what a record deal is. The record company own your songs.
You're right.
They are your intellectual property because you wrote them, right? Nobody can say that they wrote their own songs, but you, realistically, when you have a record label, the record label own your songs. That's why record labels take a large chunk of your money.
Right, okay.
Because they're the ones that distribute it. So they technically have the songs. It's like Steven Spielberg doesn't have his own films. They're distributed via, he does because he has his own company now. Amblin, right? But if he didn't have that, you'd have to go for another company, which would technically own the rights to the film. This is why you can't just go, let's take Marvel. This was a whole thing when films. The Fantastic Four was owned by Fox and etc., etc. They weren't owned by, say, Stan Lee or whoever created them. So the company can't go up to Stan Lee and go, hey, can we use these in our films? It's like, I'm sorry, I already signed a contract. They're owned by these people at the moment.
Right.
It's like how George Martin owned Game of Thrones. So you had to go to George Martin to get the rights to do a Game of Thrones adaptation because he worked as a writer in Hollywood and knew what it was like. So he owned his own stuff and never sold the rights away to it. Otherwise, it's going anywhere.
I might be wrong, but I think this is one of the reasons why Paul McCartney and John Lennon had a bit of a fallout because they were wondering if they should. I think Paul McCartney wanted to sell the rights or move to another record deal, and John Lennon was very much like, no, I want to be more in control. Something like that.
Okay.
But this was, they had loads of fallouts, of course, but I think there was one that was about record deals and, all that stuff. So, yeah, it's most of your life if you are that famous. Like, you have to think about the business side of it. It's the same with actors. Like, you get to a point where it's like, you need more people than yourself to be involved because there's just so much.
Yeah.
You become the product. So, of course, you need like a manager and an agent and a producer and a thing and a thing.
I think the easiest way to show the example that musicians most of the time don't own their own music is it's not music, it's not the artist putting out copyright strikes on YouTube. Say example let's say you played Yesterday or something. Whoever owns the Beatles catalogue, so Sony, because it's Sony that has the distribution rights to it, will claim your video because you're making money off of the song. But it's not Paul McCartney that's saying you're using my song.
No,
it's the weird realm we live in now because covers are a thing, and covers, if you make money off a cover, there's a whole thing about making covers. I can't explain it well enough because I'm not a musician in that sense. So it's like there's such a grey area of who owns who, but it's not really the people behind it. It's not really the songwriter that is claiming it back most of the time. It's usually the distribution of the company behind it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So this all stemmed from the kind of board meeting.
Yeah.
And they decided on the name One Man Only, which is sort of crass and a bit shit, and it's been used before and it's unoriginal. But it's kind of in that like state of like being original enough for people to think that it would be really cool. Do you know what I mean? It was like very cleverly done.
They made it a gimmick.
Yeah,
that was the gimmick.
Exactly.
Right? It was like
this is a selling point.
Yeah, you don't use features, you don't collaborate, it's all you. So your gimmick is you write the songs. And in that sense, it's like, but I didn't write the songs. And they go, no, you did. But I didn't write the songs.
That's the modesty talking.
It's like, it's all that. It's even from the start of the film, he's like, the Beatles. Like, the very first time he plays Yesterday, he's like, the Beatles. Like, he never at some point goes, I wrote this. Like, it's always, this isn't mine.
Yeah, no, of course.
And nobody believes him.
It's funny because when was it Carol was like, well, it's not Coldplay. It's not Fix You.
That's a good joke because I found out that Ed Sheeran was not the first choice. The first choice for the musician, the real life musician, was Chris Martin, who is the singer of Coldplay. But he had just finished the tour. He says, no, I don't want to do it. So then he went to Ed Sheeran and said, do you want to do it? And Ed Sheeran joked all the way through to Danny Boyle's going, you didn't want me second, you wanted me third. I'm sure you wanted Harry Styles because obviously Harry Styles is a very good actor according to Dunkirk. So, which would have been cool actually if they got Harry Styles, but Ed Sheeran's a good choice.
In terms of genre, I think this is, so there are multiple branches in the anticipation or sci-fi kind of. I think this is what is called an Uchronia.
Right.
So,
okay.
So essentially it's a bit like a dystopian, but in the past. So it's like a world where you would imagine that the Nazi won.
Oh, like
construct everything around that.
What's it called? Something High Castle, something like that.
Yes,
yeah.
yes. The
Man in a High Castle, something like that.
Yeah, they did a series on the Prime about that. Yes.
And the game series Wolfenstein as well, it's like that too.
Oh, interesting.
Great game.
It's probably one of my favorite subgenre of sci-fi because you have to, if you're doing it for a long time in series or franchise of books, you have to do extensive researches to know exactly what happened and how stuff would have been modified by your massive change in the middle.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
I loved everything about this. I think
it really affected you. I cried, actually, in the end when they talked about the Beatles.
I just feel that his whole life is so relatable to anybody, even acting or a musician. Like, he's at that stage of, like, he's past giving up, actually. Like, he's kind of in this realm that he would love to be successful, but he's kind of resigned to the fact that it's probably not going to work out for him. So I think that is one of the reasons that he never tries to outwardly steal the Beatles songs, because he's like, I can't, this isn't me, because he doesn't have that, some people would call it the thing you have to have, of like, you have to lose your integrity to become ultra successful, because you have to be able to just go, nah, fuck it, it's all about me. So I thought that was interesting too, that we didn't explore the whole selfish thing and then realizing like, oh, I should have been a better person. I was the best person at the beginning of the film. Like, this was a very strange but interesting way of exploring the rags to riches story, which is Aladdin is the prime example of rags to riches that everyone knows. Or like, so having nothing and then having everything and then realizing that it's you that makes you have everything, sort of thing, but you can still be wealthy. Where he becomes, the riches is recognized and loved, but did he really want that? Yes, but what's the cost? And it kind of changes from being about him, because he never tries, there's one scene where he tries to pass off the Summer song.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, we're not using that. So it's not like he could use the fame to then be him, because then that would be using the Beatles to further his career. It's kind of like presenting these songs as what they are.
Yeah, that was Deborah. So the Kate McKinnon one. It was like, yeah, so I actually, I'm not sure if I didn't like it enough to actually go to the end to be able to make sure I don't want to listen to it again or something like that.
Oh dear.
Brutal.
I did there was one subtle joke that I don't know if you missed. It was like, we're going through all the hosts of we're going to go in, we're going to go Corden, we're going to go this, we're going to go that, and then we're going to finish it off with Thursday Night Live.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it wasn't Saturday Night Live. I'm like, that's a good one. That's a really subtle one that would pass you if you didn't pay attention.
It's nice. I think he obviously, what was nice was that it added that element of, he actually learns from John Lennon, because John Lennon says you don't have anything unless you have love, right? And that's kind of the whole thing that John Lennon was about. Mm-hmm. And Yoko Ono, like, famously, he sort of stopped going to do more band stuff when he fell in love with Yoko Ono. And that's why lots of fans hate her, because she took away blah, blah, blah. But he told him, and that's why he goes on to Wembley Arena and says, I didn't write these songs, here, have them for free. And then says to Elle, I love you. And they go to bed. It's nice. I
did like that the soundtrack does include the ballad of John and Yoko in there.
Yes.
Which was nice to hear. Two other main points before I feel we're getting to the end. The whole scene in Liverpool where it's in the bedroom after they've like had the night out. The night out itself was great, but that scene was so well executed. Oh, it was so well done.
Tough to watch.
Bit surreal for me and you watching that scene, wasn't it? Was it in that scene that one of them says the exact words that we said to each other?
Oh my God, yes.
And we both looked at each other and went, oh Jesus, that we like...
He said, is this a mistake? And she said, probably. And me and Adam were like, we've literally had that conversation.
We've had that conversation.
That's literally how we started dating.
Oh dear. So it was nice because that situation felt real, because we'd been through that. At some point when she was in the car, I whispered to Anouk, it's like, is this what me and you were like? And you were like, no. But it kind of was. Like, I was oblivious. I mean, it wasn't like a friend zone thing, because we were friends, but it wasn't a friend zone.
I'm sorry, it wasn't like, get your head out your ass. Like, it wasn't like every time that you were like, bye, and we kissed, I was like, oh, please stay. Like,
No, but I don't mean exactly like that. I
Yeah.
just meant themes. I'm not saying like you're sitting.
okay, because we saw that
Sorry.
scene and immediately you were like, oh, is that what we were like?
No,
I'm
but-
like, no.
I meant in that sense of like how oblivious I was. I never mean you. I never mean you when I'm talking about.
Yeah,
that. I'm always
definitely.
talking from my perspective. Going, is that how much of a blind I was?
Yeah, but you
That's
were.
what I meant. Sorry, I'm sorry if it meant like, oh, were you a pathetic fawn
Yeah.
crying after me and I wasn't paying attention? It's like, no, I wasn't meaning that.
I've petitioned the powers that be to actually include Adam Blivius in the Oxford and Cambridge dictionary. It's in now. It's good.
Oh, brilliant. Adam Oblivious.
Oh dear.
It's a good story.
And then the other thing I thought was really good was her real reaction to when his mate, the roadie, takes too many crisps. And like,
Yeah.
that's really, so people would do that. It's like,
Yeah.
no, not all the crisps.
Like, while you're having a really deep conversation, you would stop and say, excuse me, stop eating my stuff.
I'm like, whoa, hands off. It's not all the
It was
crisps.
nice. It was very Danny Boyle-esque, like very real. And, you know, has that British feel, you know, sitting, eating crisps in a train station. It's lovely. Having a really deep conversation in front of people.
Although, what was her sandwich? Was it just tomatoes?
Because
Because it was in the shot. I was like, is she just eating a tomato sandwich?
she was eating tomato crisps, wasn't she?
No, it was tomatoes because it was a sub with tomatoes in it. I don't know. I don't see any cheese. It's like, I guess people eat tomato sandwiches.
No.
I'm not a fan, so
No thanks.
I don't have much more else. There was beautiful moments. I did the only slight thing I have is like the whole when obviously the boyfriend that they were with. I did like how that was jelly beans when they were recording in the railway tracks recording booth that they were dancing together all the time. It's like I did think it's like, is she going to fall for him instead? And the fact that they did use that for a bit, I thought was nice. I thought it wasn't just random out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
if it had been the other guy that he was friends with, the bigger the guy with the fuzzy hair that was missed the set in the beginning. Like if she'd fallen for him, I'm like, oh, that's a bit cheap. But the film took its time to show that like, oh, there was somebody that she could be with as well. It was just great all round. I loved it every minute. I really enjoyed it. That's the thing. It made me feel something, which doesn't usually happen when we watch films for reviewing purposes. Knowing that we're going to review it, there's always a critical aspect of us like separate from the movie, but I was really just engulfed by this film and it was great.
It was really nice.
Yeah.
It was really good.
There's loads of other things I could say, but I don't want to go on forever. So I very recommend you see it, and I'd happily talk to anybody about this film at length.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I'm good if we want to go into ratings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Anouk, Yann was yesterday. Good, bad, or just plain standard? Yann?
Great. Given my personal history, I don't think I'll watch it again anytime soon. But I remember it quite a lot, actually, because it was extremely focused. And I also loved it. Yeah.
Anouk?
Yeah, I'm the same. It was great. I loved it. I'm a huge Beatles fan, so like I actually cried when John Lennon came back, because of course we all want John Lennon back. And it was so nice. And also way to having a brown lead. That's always great.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, because it didn't matter, and it was like we did said in Overlord, even though we got distracted in that episode. This is important, and I'm sure we'll touch on it more in the Aladdin episode as well.
Yeah, it's not marketed as we have a brown lead, because you don't need to be that.
No, very
guy.
true. For me, it's in the vault. It's very short off being is Legendary better than Masterpiece?
No, Legendary it's
Beyond. Yeah, that's the top one.
It's a masterpiece that had time to mature for years.
Yeah, so I don't think I could call this a masterpiece yet, but I would say I am annoyed at Danny Boyle because now this might be better than Trainspotting in my enjoyment of
Wow.
it. Maybe not as a whole film.
No.
Like Trainspotting itself has this legacy and this realness to it, and it will always be this masterpiece piece of cinema, right? But for sheer enjoyment and making me feel something that, I mean, that might have been different if I was at the right age to see Trainspotting, because I definitely felt it with Trainspotting 2, so it happens. This is up there in the top 3 of the favourite Danny Boyle films, so it's in the vault, it means something, it's honestly, in the world where I haven't seen Rocket Man yet, so I won't comment on that, but it just kind of destroyed Bohemian Rhapsody for me, of like, not about, because that film is meant to be about the music, and they all go, it's about Freddie and the music, but this film was about the Beatles, but wasn't about the Beatles. Like it was, what a way to showcase and honour something that institutional by not making it the function of the film and in the open presence. Like, it was always there, it was integral to the story, but it never overshadowed what else was going on, the human drama of the story. So, and to do that in a film and make you feel all these emotions and have a great time while watching it is a real achievement. So, in the vault for me.
Amazing.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Long beside Alien. Well, great.
Stuff to add?
Not at the moment, I don't think.
I don't think so.
Cool. Well, at some point next month, so in July, we'll have a special pre-Edinburgh Fringe episode. Well, we'll be plugging friends and artists we went to see before and all that stuff. We were
Adam.
Anouk.
And Yann. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Good, the Bad, and the Just Plain Standard podcast. If you like what you heard, you can leave us a review via iTunes. If you want to keep up to date with what we're doing, you can check us out on Facebook and Instagram at Good, Bad, Standard Podcast on both platforms. If you fancy seeing the live streams that we talk about on the podcast, they can be found on youtube.com. You search for Milk in a Wineglass. There are other bits and bobs on there too, just to see what Yann's up to during the week. And if you really like us, like really, really like us, why don't you head on over to patreon.com/goodbadstandardpodcast and have a look if you want to support us. Any small donation is appreciated.